from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on AgDay, a historic day in farm country as President Donald Trump prepares to speak to farmers and ranchers in Nashville.
I don't know whether it'll be a campaign-like speech there or more of a policy speech.
Agriculture hoping he's a straight shooter on trade. As land prices stabilize, should farmers use land as collateral this year?
We don't want to get into that perfect storm where land values drop and all of a sudden we don't have that equity to rely on.
In agribusiness, there could be fireworks in the grain markets this week.
You know, when you look at the lack of exports, there's big issues potentially coming up if we don't get this going.
And the Arctic blast is as far-reaching as the Gulf, as hundreds of sea turtles are feeling the impacts too.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan in for Clinton Griffiths. It's a historic day for farmers. For the first time in nearly 30 years, a president is addressing farmers and ranchers at the annual American Farm Bureau Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. Betsy Gibbon is now here with more. Now, Betsy, while it's unclear exactly what the president will say, he will need to address his tough stance on trade.
That's right, Tyne. I've talked to a number of industry experts who say January will give us a clearer picture on where the president stands with trade agreements, and that clarification may begin in Nashville. President Trump is no stranger to addressing rural America.
The promise of a safe, reliable, and modern infrastructure hasn't been kept, but we're going to keep it.
But today, he will stand in front of farmers and ranchers. Farm Journal Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer says the president will be in his element.
You know, let's face it, 60% or more of the rural sector, votes Republican. They just do. That's facts. And they definitely voted for him this past election.
However, trade is a growing concern in rural America this year. A deal with South Korea called Chorus is the latest deal announced to be renegotiated. The North American Free Trade Agreement with Canada and Mexico is still being renegotiated as well. And some farmers don't want to see a trade disruption.
I guess my biggest worry right now is the political landscape of NAFTA. If that gets messed up, we haven't seen anything yet for low prices, I don't think.
Yeah, I give a lot of speeches, as you know, and I'm beginning to pick up not just concerns, but anger in the farm and ranching communities on they need to see a more positive blend of Trump's, trade policies.
While it's uncertain what the president will address,
I don't know whether it'll be a campaign-like speech there or more of a policy speech.
Industry leaders across the board say it's crucial for the president to clarify and highlight his stance on trade.
What I hope he spends some time talking about is a proactive trade agenda to help U.S. farmers and ranchers be able to maintain and expand opportunities for them to sell their products in foreign markets. I think there's a lot of question out there right now about what the trade situation is going to look like for farmers, and I hope he's able to address that very clearly.
Vetter, a former U.S. trade chief ag negotiator under the Obama administration, says uncertainty is costly for ag.
What U.S. and what foreign business leaders and farmers and ranchers need is an understanding of what prices and what markets will look like, not just today, but tomorrow and 5 years from now, so they can forge relationships and make good investments.
In addition to AFBF's convention, another NAFTA 2.0 meeting and the State of the Union are all on the president's January calendar. Both experts say this is a pivotal month for the president when it comes to outlining his priorities on trade.
Thanks, Betsy. Well, the Trump administration coming off a win with its tax overhaul, and that's expected to be another topic during his Farm Bureau speech today. The new legislation addressing some farmer concerns, like with the estate tax, but it also included a Section 199 Cap A deduction, which deals with farmer sales to co-ops. It includes a 20% pass-through deduction on gross sales, which could mean $0 in taxable income for farmers who sell goods to co-ops. That includes all products such as grain and dairy. But Farm CPA Paul Neefer says there are stipulations, including that a farmer must be a member of that co-op to qualify. And he says it's a line item in the new tax code that's generating misinformation within agriculture.
And I don't know if it's cooperatives or whoever it is out there, they're telling farmers that this is the equivalent of a 20 or 30 cent per bushel benefit to the farmer. And the reality is, in order to get this benefit, the farmer has to have taxable income. And under the new code, farmers that invest money in equipment and so on likely are not going to have taxable income. So this perceived 30-cent deduction or benefit is actually going to be zero, because this is sort of a use it or lose it. You could have a $2 million deduction from selling all your grain to a cooperative, and if your taxable income was $50,000, you get a $50,000 deduction, and the extra $1,950,000 disappears. It just goes out in the atmosphere and is never seen again. So, there's so much miscommunication on this, that this is somehow a huge extra deduction to farmers. It's potentially a better deduction, but it could exactly be the same benefit as the other deduction, and if they don't have taxable income, there's no benefit.
Nefer says the industry is still waiting on the IRS to issue regulations around the provision, but that may not happen until this summer. And he says it will be defined in a document that could be anywhere from 20 to 100 pages in length. Well, the farm economy may be sluggish, but land auctions are still drawing in impressive prices, with a record sale in Illinois to finish out the year. According to Landowner Newsletter, a land auction in Woodford County, Illinois, which had 77 acres, raked in a record price of $15,850 an acre. Soy Capital Ag Services handled the auction and called it spirited bidding on the 100% tillable parcel of land from local farmers. Now, as some land prices drift higher, is it wise for farmers to use land as collateral when securing a farm loan? Ag lenders say it depends.
The biggest thing is having the appropriate level of debt on that land and not having too much on there, to where you get in a position, the worst place you can be is where you have to be a forced seller, and try to avoid that. So make sure you don't have too much debt on your land. Make sure you can make the payments, or your payments are appropriate for your comparable rent level, or rent where rent should be, and don't get over leveraged on your real estate either.
It seems like in our market, about a 50% loan to value on farmland right now is about what it will cash flow. That being said, again, the primary reason is to spread those payments out if we do have several years of problems. We don't want to get into that perfect storm where land values drop and all of a sudden we don't have that equity to rely on. At the same time that interest rates start going up, which we keep hearing, we don't try to predict, but as we hear, if interest rates go up and you don't take advantage of the opportunities now, that could create kind of almost a double whammy down the road for you.
Well, the East Coast seeing high winds and now buried in snow, while the upper plains saw temps dip down way below zero. But in the West, it's the story of a slow snow season. The California Department of Water Resources conducting its first snow survey of the season in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Officials say they only measured 0.4 of snow water equivalent, 3% of the average for this time of year, and the average is 11.3 inches at that spot. The department says it's too early to determine what this could mean for the year, as California is only a third of the way through the state's 3 wettest months. However, they are calling it a disappointing start compared to last year's above normal amounts. It's that snowpack that's used to supply agriculture irrigation needs. Well, Mike Hoffman is with us to kick off another week. He has a look at today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Tyne. Here's a picture where you can really see the cold over the Iroquois, South Dakota area. Jay Culver snapped this when it was minus 35 degrees. He says he's now feeding cows on stalks with snow cover. They're making it through the cold all right, though. Pete Cameron over in central New York sending us this picture from his cattle operation. He says last week he had lows in the minus 15 range. Now it's starting to warm up a little bit in the area. And taking a look at the estimated rain last week, you can see most of the country did not see much. Now this would include melted snow. Of course, fluffy snow doesn't melt down to much, so it's really been mainly the East Coast from Florida all the way up to Maine as that big storm system moved up through the eastern portions of the country. We'll have your forecast for the week coming up in just a few minutes. First, here are some hometown temps.
Deciding whether to sell your old equipment? Well, Machinery Pete's Pick of the Week lets you stay informed on current market prices, allowing you to set the best possible price for your equipment. Text Pete6 to 31313 to get started.
Still to come, as USDA prepares to release its big January report this week, what should you expect? That's analysis. Plus, Machinery Pete checks in.
Stay tuned, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk used planters and the change I saw in the market in December.
And dangerous cold temperatures are even hurting animals in the ocean. We explain in the country. All right, welcome back. I mean, starting off this week, there's a lot to watch when it comes to the markets. January USDA report typically is a big market mover. Steve, let's start with you. I mean, what can we possibly expect?
You know, I think the bigger expectations, corn, we've got a lot of it. We're going to see carryout numbers fluctuate. Even if they do lower carryout numbers, it's still a big pile. But for beans may be the bigger surprise on this report. Export sales being behind as they are, that may have a bigger fluctuation of what USDA does. Do they balloon this carryout number because of the lack of sales that we've had here recently?
Yeah, soybean exports, I mean, they have just been so disappointing. And so, you know, let's say we even see USDA trim production a little bit, but we see them also trim the demand side. I mean, what impact could that have on price?
Well, I mean, soybeans, you know, 50% of what we produce is exported generally. So, you know, when you look at the lack of exports, there's big issues potentially coming up if we don't get this going. And we're past the halfway point of, you know, the marketing year, when we generally move more soybeans. So beans, you know, I think to me it's important to see how the market reacts heading into the report for both corn and beans. To me, the reaction coming into it might help me decide how you want to play the trade as we get to the number, but generally a very volatile report.
Yeah, how can you prepare for that volatility?
As a producer, you need to be mindful of what kind of cash you still have in the bin. Where do you stand with that? You can't withstand another pullback in this market without doing something. It may be more so on beans. I would not be surprised to see a friendly report out of corn and maybe see a negative report for beans.
Okay. Moving to cattle, you know, the end of the week last week, we did not see positive trade in the cattle market. What is going on?
Well, the cash market, I mean, wasn't as exciting as we would like to have seen it. Now, you know, we had a big rip at the beginning of the week, gapped higher, and we basically gave that all back within 3 sessions. Not unusual for the cattle market to be that volatile, but, you know, moving into next week, you know, I think we need to continue to keep an eye on product movement. That's kind of been the backbone of this, as well as, you know, exports and foreign demand. China, a small percentage, but they are starting to buy our beef, as we saw last fall. So demand's going to be the front runner if we're going to keep cattle going.
All right, thank you both for being here. We appreciate it. We need to take a quick break, but it was such a wild weather week last week. What can we expect this week? Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joins us next.
AgDay, brought to you by Liberty Herbicide, the simply better solution for superior weed control and a stronger yield.
All right, welcome back. Time now for a check of weather. Mike, after the crazy, wild weather week we had last week, I mean, we had that weather bomb, and I'm not going to get you on your soapbox again on that.
Thank you.
It was a wild week. Please tell me this week is not going to be as much.
Well, it's not going to be as cold. In those extreme cold areas, it's just not going to be. And so that's the best news of it. You can see on the jet stream this morning that we don't have that deep trough anymore in the east. We have a little bit of a trough in the Great Lakes, a little bit down through the southern Mississippi Valley. Still a ridge out west, but we're trying to see that trough coming into the west coast as well. So let's put the maps into motion, see what it looks like. You can see our model is really bringing in a pretty good storm system through the southwestern portions of the country. That could be your first moisture in 2 or 3 months, so that's probably some very good news there. That means a brief warm up in the eastern portions of the country, but there is still very cold air lurking in Canada, and once we get into the second part of the week, we see a little shot of colder air coming up along the border. A little bit chillier farther south, but not too bad yet. And then as we head into the weekend, you can see we definitely do develop a trough again in the east, the ridge out west. This isn't, excuse me, nearly as deep though as we had seen, and so we're not going to see the air nearly as cold once again. But this is going to be another cold shot as we head through next weekend and into the early part of the following week. So temperatures this week, this is my forecast from Missouri, northeast Kansas, northward, below normal temperatures, just not nearly as far below normal. Above normal for the mid-Atlantic into the southeast, and also above normal for the Four Corner region, California and Oregon. Everybody else pretty close to normal. Precipitation for the coming week expected to be below normal then in that colder air from the Dakotas, eastern Montana, Minnesota northward, but from Arkansas on up through Maine. Looks like above normal, and also above normal with that system coming into the southwest. That's the first time we've shown that. in quite some time. Taking a look at the 30-day outlook for temperatures, I'm going below normal for most areas in the eastern 2/3 of the country. Four Corner region, California, above normal temperatures, and 30-day outlook for precipitation from Mississippi and Alabama up through the Great Lakes, above normal. Below normal for Iowa into the northern plains, and also below normal for the southwestern portions of the country. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, for Casper, Wyoming, a good deal of sunshine, rather mild, high around 40 degrees. Rolla, Missouri, variably cloudy and a bit milder, high up to 43. And finally, Rochester, New York, cloudy with periods of snow, but the high at 36.
Still to come, Machinery Pete checks in to look at some soft spots in the equipment market that could end up turning into good deals for those looking to buy. And bone-chilling cold is a threat to our friends at sea. We'll tell you how animal lovers are stepping in.
AgDay, brought to you by Prosaro Fungicide from Bayer. Machinery Pete is brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new.
Machinery Pete says it was a surprisingly strong finish to 2017 when it comes to equipment buys and prices, but there are a couple exceptions with soft spots in the market. Here's Machinery Pete.
The two softest spots in the used equipment market end of 2017 I thought were large tillage and planters. Now with planters, kind of what the deal is, it was those older planters, those 10, 15-year-old models, the larger ones, 16-row, 24, soft auction prices on those, folks wanting to get into the later models with the new technology. Now, I did start to see a shift in the month of December though. In fact, at our MachineryPete.com website, we have over 2,900 planters listed for sale today. And we saw a 25% increase in search traffic in December versus November. And on the auction market, I also saw things get stronger throughout the month. In fact, last Friday, December 29th, on a farm auction in northeast South Dakota, a pair of 2016 John Deere DB66 36-row 22-inch planters were up for sale, both with around 7,000 acres. Now, here's a picture of one that brought $224,000 and the other brought $220,000. Very strong prices. In fact, I compared those to retail DB66 36-row planters listed for sale at MachineryPete.com, and I found them as high as $286,000, but also here's a picture of one for sale at Valley Plains Equipment in Jamestown, North Dakota, listed for $232,500. So very close to what the pair just brought at auction last Friday in South Dakota. And what I think this shows, again, is farmers' desire to get into the latest planting technology.
Well, hundreds of sea turtles have been rescued by volunteers. We'll tell you why next.
AgDay, brought to you by Corvus, the #1 pre-emergence corn herbicide.
Well, the Arctic blast striking the U.S. isn't just impacting all of us, but sea creatures down in the Gulf as well. Hundreds of green sea turtles have been rescued after they were stunned by the bitter cold on Padre Island National Seashore. Many groups say the cold has been too much for them to handle. Now volunteers and organizations are hard at work looking for more turtles to bring to safety.
So today on the Texas coast, about 500 green sea turtles have been found cold stunned, thanks to the hard work of many groups going out and looking for these turtles and bringing them in so that they can be documented, identified, and then sent off to rehabilitation for care. It's our hope that through these efforts we'll be able to save these turtles so they can be repatriated back into our Texas waters soon.
The National Park Service released videos of scientists documenting, tagging, and caring for the sea turtles before the creatures are transferred where they will receive more recovery. It was definitely bitterly cold everywhere. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. Thanks for starting your week with us. For Mike Hoffman and Betsy Gibbon, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great day in farm country.
AgDay, brought to you by Top Third Ag Marketing. Farmer first with a plan for every market.